Hello and welcome to HCB, where today it is predictions once again for week 11 of the Premier League, and it's Halloween special. Yeah, if you celebrate Halloween, I don't. I can't be bothered with it. But if you do, you consider this a Halloween special, as this is coming out on Halloween. So on to the first game. It's the mid-table derby in the early kickoff as Bournemouth take on Manchester United. Now, I should point out something. I'm recording this episode this week on a Wednesday, so there are a couple of League Cup games still yet to play, one of them being Man United-Chelsea. I do understand that if Man United either thrash Chelsea or vice versa, this could have a little bit of an impact on my prediction, as we'll see in a couple of other games as well. But going from their last Premier League game, Man United are coming off a good 3-1 win down at Carrow Road. Meanwhile, Bournemouth coming off consecutive 0-0 draws, with the most recent one being against Watford, extending their winless run in the Premier League to 4 games. If we look at the last time if we look at recent form between the two teams, you can see that Man United have won most of the games. They've won the last 4 against Bournemouth. With the most recent one being a 4-1 win in December last year. Meanwhile, Bournemouth have only won 1 in their last 8 against Man United, and that was their first meeting in the Premier League, which was a 2-1 win. With regards to the game itself, Man United, despite winning away at Norwich last week, are still a bit shaky away from home. That was their first away win this season, and I think against a bit of a harder defence, which Bournemouth have, it will be a bit more of a struggle for them to score more goals. Meanwhile, I think after conceding, having not scored in the last 2, Bournemouth will want to prove a point and at least get 1 on the board. With that in knowledge, I'm going to say this game will end in a score draw, 1-1. Up next, we go to the Saturday game. We go to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, and the first one is the Europa League derby as Arsenal take on Wolves. Now, again, this is similar to the Man United scenario. Arsenal playing Liverpool tonight. If Arsenal beat Liverpool, I can tell you now, my prediction would be completely wrong. Well, there's a likely chance it will be completely wrong. In the Premier League, both teams are coming off draws. Arsenal at home to Crystal Palace 2-2. Meanwhile, Wolves coming off a 1-1 draw away at Newcastle. With regards to the recent form, Wolves have only beaten Arsenal in their last 8 encounters against them, but it was the most recent encounter, with Wolves winning 3-1 at Molineux and also not losing to them last year, with the other game ending 1-1. With regards to form going into the game, both teams have won 2 games in their last 7 and have not won in their last 2. With regards to the game itself, I believe that Arsenal have not looked good at the back. That's not a controversial statement, to be fair. I think everyone knows Arsenal are not great defensively, and especially with Granit Xhaka, their captain, being under criticism last week. The energy at Arsenal is not good at the moment, and I believe Wolves, especially after seeing they beat City 2-0 a few weeks ago, can pull off the upset here, and I'm actually going to say that this game will end 2-1 to Wolves. Again, this is what I mean. If Arsenal beat Liverpool the weekend, tonight, I'd be slightly concerned that this one will be wrong. However, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed Liverpool win that, so this will be correct. We now move on to the Emil Heskey derby as Villa play Liverpool. Villa obviously now came off their loss against City last weekend, 3-0. Meanwhile, Liverpool coming off a 2-1 win at home to Spurs. Obviously, Liverpool, top of the league at the moment, still undefeated. Meanwhile, Villa have won 2 of their last 3, with their only loss coming against Man City. With regards to the history between the two sides, obviously they haven't played since Villa were last in the Prem, which was in 2016. I don't think they want to remember that last meeting against Liverpool, because it was at Villa Park where they lost 6-0 at home. I do actually remember watching that game, and Villa were comically bad, but then again, I'm pretty sure that just sums up their season as a whole. Villa obviously have got 2 of their wins out of their 3 at home, with wins against Brighton and Everton. Meanwhile, obviously Liverpool have won every game bar 1 against United. I'll be honest, I'm not expecting there to be a shock in this one, especially after Villa's I'd say slightly subpar performance against City, especially being goalless at half time. I thought they could have done a bit better, managed it in the second half. So with that in mind, I do believe Liverpool will win this relatively comfortably, and I'm going to say it will be 2-0 to Liverpool. Up next, we have the Chris Hughton derby as Brighton play Norwich. Brighton coming off a last gasp win against Everton on Saturday, making it the second game where there has been a last late winner in the 94th minute. This one going for them as opposed to the Villa loss a couple of weeks ago. Meanwhile, Norwich losing to Man United last weekend, making it their fifth game without a win and making it 8 goals conceded in their last 2 home games, with obviously the other 5 coming against Villa. And now the concerning thing for Norwich is the simple fact that they have not won a away game this year, and in fact they've only got picked up 1 point away from home with a 0-0 draw against Bournemouth. Meanwhile, Brighton have looked quite good at home in the sense that they have only themselves lost 1 game at home, being a 2-0 loss to Southampton. Other than that, they've picked up 2 wins and 2 draws, with their last 2 outings at home both being the wins against Everton and Tottenham. But then again, neither of those sides can win away, so in some ways that could be expected. As for this game itself, I do worry for Norwich because their attack has completely gone to tatters with only 2 goals in their last 5, with only 2 goals since the City game, which was in early September. Meanwhile, Brighton are still sky high after 2 wins in their last 3, with the only loss coming to a last-minute goal against Aston Villa. So with that in mind, I believe this could be another poor day for Norwich, and they will seriously ask questions of Daniel Fagner if this happens. But with Brighton's attacking ability and Neil Maupay especially on form, I reckon he will score in this game. I'm going to say that this game will end 3-0 to Brighton. Now we move on to and this is the longest name I've got, oh God, I dread to think what this score will be, derby, as Man City play Southampton. Now, I know that name might be a bit harsh on Southampton, especially after they only lost 3-1 in the cup during during the midweek. However, I will say City are definitely a harder outfit to play in the Premier League than they are in the cup, despite them playing both Aguero and Jesus during the cup. Obviously, with recent form, that you don't really need to say Prem-wise. Man City came off a 3-0 win against Villa. I think we all know what the last result for Southampton was, a 9-0 loss to Leicester. And as I said in my review, when you lose 9-0, I think the last team you want is to play Man City at the Etihad. Maybe you think, well, at least it's away, so we don't have to show this to our glorious fans at St Mary's. I mean, I'm 99% confident that there'll be more Southampton fans at the end of this game than there was at the end of the Leicester game, mainly because they all need buses to get down south. As for the result itself, now, I mean, I think most people will be just going, before I get onto the result, let's look at their recent history. Let's see if Southampton have any chance. Well, in their last 10 meetings, City have won 8 of them, Southampton only once, and their last win against Man City came in 2016, 4-2. If you look at last season's results, they lost 3-1, and at the Etihad they lost 6-1, making it a 9-2 aggregate score. At least they only conceded 9 goals in 2 games this time. I will stop going on about that 9-0 loss eventually, Southampton fans. If there are any Southampton fans that watch these videos, I'd be amazed, to be fair. And if you are a Southampton fan watching this, please stay. I will stop bullying your club. Obviously, if we go to this result, I mean, as I said, take your pick between probably numbers like 3 and 7. You're going to be somewhere in the right. I'm going to go down the middle, and I'm going to say Man City will win this one 5-0. Now, it could be maybe a bit closer than that, but let's be honest. City are winning this. This is the guarantee. I am guaranteeing this one will be, at least the result will be correct. Up next, we have the we're more defensive than you derby as Sheffield United host Burnley. Sheffield United coming off a 1-1 draw against West Ham, meaning they're still unbeaten away from home. Meanwhile, Burnley coming off a 4-2 loss at home to Chelsea. With regards to the history between the two teams, this is their first meeting in the Prem. I'm pretty sure, at least in the 21st century. So this was the first time they've met within there. The last time these two teams played each other was a while ago, a few years ago, where but Sheffield United were struggling in the Championship. Meanwhile, Burnley were on the cusp. So I do think because it was so long ago, it's a bit harsh to reflect on that result. Uh, as for as for recent form, while Sheffield United have had a good, while Sheffield United have had not a bad record at home, they've only won one game at home, that being against Arsenal. Oh no, sorry, they've won two games at home, being against Arsenal and Crystal Palace. My apologies. But however, all three of their losses so far this season have come also at home. So there's a bit of chance there for Burnley, who themselves are looking to respond after two back-to-back losses. But the concerning thing for them is they haven't won. They haven't won away from home this season, only picking up 3 points from three draws away from home. As for the game itself, as the sort of derby title says, these sides are both very defensive, especially Sheffield United, who are joint with the lowest amount of goals conceded in the Premier League. Burnley are not far behind if you don't take into account the fact they conceded four against Chelsea last week. They're actually a little bit close. As for the game itself, as I said, I believe both teams will be quite stubborn in their tactics, which is not a bad thing. Stubbornness is quite good. However, I do think it will result in a lack of goals, and this is potentially a candidate for last on match of the day this week. I'm going to say this will be 0-0, and I think both teams will take that, to be fair, because it just keeps them going in a relatively decent position in the Premier League. Up next, we have the Andy Carroll derby as West Ham host Newcastle. West Ham coming off a 1-1 draw against Sheffield United, cementing them to a fourth game in a row without a win. Meanwhile, Newcastle coming off also a 1-1 draw at home, this one against Wolves. With their last meetings, the last four times these teams have played, West Ham last season did the double over Newcastle with a 2-0 win at London Stadium and a 3-0 win at St James's Park. But the time before then, Newcastle did the double over West Ham, with Newcastle winning 3-2 at the London Stadium and 3-0 at St James's Park. So this is all to play for. Obviously, Newcastle will be without Sean Longstaff after he got sent off against Wolves. So especially their midfield will be weaker than it is. As for the game itself, I believe that due to Newcastle's sort of lack of goal scoring ability, there won't be, and West Ham's to an extent as well, there won't be many goals. However, I believe West Ham's quality in this game, especially up top, will shine through, meaning that they will just be able to nick one and hopefully keep a clean sheet against a side that has only scored 6 goals so far in the Premier League, just averaging over half a goal a game. So with that being said, I believe this game will end 1-0 to West Ham. Finally, we go to the late kickoff, which is also known as the Nathaniel Chalobah derby. You try and find another player that's played for Watford and Chelsea, as Watford take on Chelsea, as I just said. Watford coming off their third straight draw, which was a 1-1 draw, a 0-0 draw, against Bournemouth. Meanwhile, Chelsea coming off their fourth straight win, a 4-2 win against Burnley. Obviously, Chelsea playing tonight in Europa League, in the EFL Cup against Man United. So that result might affect how they feel going into this game. Meanwhile, Watford are now out of that cup, losing 2-0 to Everton. With regards to the recent form, obviously I could go for wins and losses home away. Watford haven't won a single game yet. With 10 games in, they still haven't won a game. Meanwhile, in their last meetings, despite relatively recently Watford beating Chelsea 4-1, that was their only win against them in their last 8 meetings, with Chelsea winning doing the double over them last season with a 3-0 win at Stamford Bridge and a 2-1 win against Watford. At Vicarage Road, obviously it was against Watford. We are talking about Chelsea versus Watford here. As for the game itself, I said in my review, Watford needed to win this one. I said no matter who they are playing, they do need to win a game. However, just because I say they need to win it, doesn't mean I think they actually will. Because what Chelsea reminded me last week was they are a danger when it comes to goals. scored. And if you look at the amount of goals Chelsea score on a regular basis, it's like with bar a couple games, it's like a 3-4 on a consistency. Watford have only scored 5 goals so far in the entire Premier League season, which is shocking. It's literally zero point 0.5 goals a game. It's half a goal a game, which you can see why they're last because of it. Uh, Taking that all into consideration, and especially thinking that Chelsea's attacking players will have a good day with the likes of Tammy Abraham and Callum Hudson-Odoi, and after Pulisic as well, who's on form, scoring a hat-trick, I believe this will be quite a bad day for Watford and Watford fans. I believe Chelsea will come out this one winning 4-0. Now we move on to Sunday, the 2 Sunday games, and the first one up is the Jeffrey Schlupp derby as Crystal Palace take on Leicester into. Now this is obviously a battle between 2 sides that are surprisingly doing well. I mean, Leicester obviously you could say is not that surprising, but I mean like they're 2 non-supposed top 6 sides in the top 6 currently, with Leicester being 3rd, Palace being in 6th place. Both sides are coming off good results for different reasons. Palace coming off a 2-2 draw against Arsenal after being 2-0 down at the Emirates. Meanwhile, Leicester coming off the small fact that they beat a side 9-0 away from home in the Premier League in 2019. I still can't get my head around it. So, Leicester coming off a cup win at Burton Albion this weekend. I don't think that was really ever in doubt. As for recent form, it's pretty even between the 2 sides, with actually Crystal Palace winning the last 4 meetings between the sides and scoring quite a few goals actually, with the most recent one being Claude Puel's last game in charge of Leicester, a 4-1 loss at the King Power. And before then, it's even won the first game that season ended 1-0 to Crystal Palace, and then if you look at the 2 games in the 17-18 season, Leicester lost 5-0 and 3-0, making the overall total of goals between the 2 sides, the last 4 meetings, 13-1, which is quite a weird stat when you think about it, considering the form Leicester are in. With that logic, you would actually put Palace to win this game, and especially the form they're in as well. As as for the the recent form away, Leicester, that was only, despite Leicester obviously winning 9-0, that was their only second away win this season, with both their losses also coming away from home. Meanwhile, Palace have actually only also won 2 games at home this season, that being against Norwich and Aston Villa. That all taking that into consideration, when a team wins 9-0 or like, wins by a lot of goals, so usually Man City, but in this case it's Leicester, I don't believe they will drop to an extent where they won't be able to beat the following side. I know Palace are good, and I think they will score this this week, probably with a set piece. Let's be honest, I was half right on that last week. They scored with a penalty, one of their goals. I believe Palace will score something like a set piece. But when you've just scored 9, you're not gonna all of a sudden lose. I don't think so. I'm gonna say Leicester will win this one, not by 9-0, just a tight 2-1 instead. Now we move on to the final game, which is the can't win away derby as Everton play Spurs. Man, I've done only like 4 videos, and I'm pretty sure I've slagged off Spurs about 10 million times already. It's too easy. I mean, we're above you still already. We're above you at the moment, West Ham. Obviously, both sides coming off losses last week away from home. Everton's being a 3-2 loss with a last-minute goal against Brighton. Meanwhile, Spurs losing 2-1 against Liverpool after taking the lead in the first minute. With regards to the form, as I said, it's called the can't win away derby. Neither side's won away. Everton, however, that is good news for Everton as they are home, with all 3 of their wins this year coming at home against Wolves, Watford, and West Ham. I'm sensing there's a theme there. I've just realised they've only managed to beat teams beginning with W. I suppose Spurs beginning with T. Is that close enough? With regards to the history between the 2 sides, this game has always brought a lot of goals. Now, the last meeting between the 2 sides was 2-2, but if you especially look at the Goodison Park encounters, the last 2 times at Goodison Park, Spurs have won both of them, the most recent one being a 6-2 win at Goodison. The most recent encounter was most recent encounter was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last game last day of the season last year, it was a 2-2 draw, which actually was quite low scoring for this fixture. And as for the game itself, it's hard to. For me, this is a must-win game for both sides. Everton need to win this after only winning one game in their last six, or just getting anything in their last six. They've won one but lost their other five. Meanwhile, Spurs desperately need to win to actually catch up with the European pack as a European pack, and at the very least, and if they're trying to push for it, the top four. And they also need to get a win away from home because they haven't beaten a current Premier League side away from home in 2019. They've only won twice in the Premier League away from home, and this year, and that was against Cardiff and Fulham, who obviously went down. Having said all that, though, I don't believe they will get their first away win this game. I think there's too much pressure on both sides, on the Everton side, for Spurs to just roll over. I believe, though, I will say this. If either manager loses this one, I believe they are in big danger of getting sacked within the week. Now, I have just put up that hypothesis there. I don't believe that will actually happen. I believe this will be a fun game to watch. It will be a 2-2 draw. But as I said, bear this in mind. If either side loses, I believe their manager might get sacked. Now, that is all the games done. We now move on to the fantasy side. Now, after last week, because I didn't make a transfer, I had two of them, and I've used them like this. I swapped out Sebastian Haller for Tammy Abraham, and I swapped out Seamus Coleman for O'Connell of Sheffield United. This is mainly because Sheffield United have a good defensive record. Well, as I've said, they've conceded the least amount of goals joint with anyone. So the starting lineup is Schmeichel in goal, Robertson, Sonahue, Otamendi, and Lundstram in the back four. Kevin De Bruyne, Mane, and Hudson-Odoi in the midfield. I will say I haven't confirmed. I might not keep Kevin De Bruyne as captain next. Actually, they're playing Southampton. I'll keep Kevin De Bruyne as captain, and then a front three of Firmino, Abraham, and Aubameyang, which is a very strong lineup up top. On the bench, we've got Button, obviously still is just a keeper to make up. Cheap keeper to make up the numbers. O'Connell, Dendoncker, and an injured N'Golo Kante, who will obviously play no part in the game. After my poor week last week, I hope to rebound and do better, especially in my fantasy league, move up from 4th place. So that will be the end of the video this week. Hope you enjoyed it. I know some people would have enjoyed the fact it's a lot shorter than my other ones. I do think the predictions ones in particular will probably be around this length, with the review ones being slightly longer so I can go in the games. Let me know what you think the scores will be this week for the games. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you on Monday for the review show.